Hello there, Ice Runners and Claw members. My name is Scarthan, and this is the third video in the Runeterra Designs Series. In the first two videos, we went through the lore of the Winter's Claw, the various designs of his war mother, Sejuani, and some of the younger members of the tribe. This video will be about characters that are portrayed with a mount, minus of course Sejuani herself that we have covered before. Without waiting any further, let's get to the fun parts. Scarthan Stephen. Boy, do I have things to say about this one. But before I lose my mind over details, let's start off with light and composition for once. So, imagine you don't know the card's name, or that our big boy over here is actually wearing the shirt and the biting cold. How would you determine who's the main guy in the image? There are 5 humans and a feline. Huh? Who's the main guy here? You probably have the answer yourself, but might have some trouble articulating it. So I'm here to just say the words aloud. First of all, he is centered. He is very much centered. Every line in the mountain ridge, every cloud in the sky, everything in the image falls to a vanishing point about here, right behind Stephen's chest. Then there is the fact that he is mounted. Yeah. So, if you see, Stephen is here considered cavalry, where everyone else is infantry. Also, he has all sorts of details more than everyone else. He's just covered in scars and trinkets, and just has a bunch of weapons. He has a glaive, and a hand axe, and 2 bone weapons. You know? And of course, he has 3% body fat, because he is too cool to feel a cold. And of course, in lighting sense, he and especially his mount are the most lit by sunlight from top left. So let's move away from the most central character to centerpiece centrally of the Centerland and go to this guy. So this guy just looks like a random dude. Like, he looks like someone I could just casually see on the street someday. There is a bit of realism to his face that just isn't the same with other. Look, these guys, they mostly look like fantasy characters still. Like, you don't really think of any real person when you look at them, but this idiot, this looks like someone I have actually seen in my life. Then there is Nathaniel Parker. Like, you can't convince me. This is literally Nathaniel Parker. And he's eating something, probably a piece of bread. Then there is the pigtails on his fur pelt, which I don't understand. Like, what's the point? Why not just, you know, tie them together if you want to make it heavier on the front so it doesn't fall off? Then there are these discs, which I said we will talk about, and these discs are definitely not armor. They aren't protecting shit, and they're also here on Stephen and on other characters as well. My hypothesis is that these discs are achievements, like a good kill count, or leading a claw to a good hunt, or something. So, yeah, that's what I think about this. Skipping Stephen once again, fuck this guy. Look at the youngster and his giant unusable mallet. This mallet is not usable, people. It doesn't fucking work at all. You see how big this stone is compared to how thin this stick is? Like, and look, the leather straps go all over the fucking stone and barely over the wood. This thing is supposed to just snap 3 seconds after this image. And even if it doesn't, and like, imagine like if the leather straps came all the way to the bottom of the haft and it was actually reinforced, even then it would just break at here-ish at the first fucking hit, because the weight distribution just doesn't match at all. I guess that's enough losing my mind over a hammer. So the guy himself isn't exactly interesting. He's just a Netflix teenager. Like, literally, like he has a baby face in the arms of Kratos. And he has a Brad Pitt haircut, because why not? Then there is the pelt around his neck. I have no idea what this thing is. This cannot be a Druvask nor an Elmo calf, because the calves don't have this big of a tusk relative to their skulls. Moving on, you Stephen, to Mr. Ravenlocks over here. I really hope that this is a thing that's connected to his belt, because that is a large earring otherwise. That earring is so large someone can just pull on it and rip your ear off. And then of course he has the most photogenic face of them all, and he's looking directly at the camera and smiling for the audience. Yeah, this guy is specifically looking at us. I like the bear pelt, the fact that the claws are visible here. I do not understand the metal studs here on his mantle. Then there's the fact that, you know, I said tatters, worn out clothes, rugged sewing because Winter's Claw are poor and don't know how to do tailoring and keeping Stephen once again. No. I think he earned it this time. So, Scarthan Stephen at last. Right off the bat, why is he on steroids? And why is he shirtless on top of it all? Like, I do like a godlike physique, but seriously, this guy is not confirmed to be an Iceborn, meaning he is not specially resistant to the cold. Having this much muscle definition means his body fat is super low, which means there isn't much fat to store water or insulate his body, and our boy over here must be dying of hypothermia over the next hour. Hand waving all of that because fantasy setting and logic. I do like it at least one of the Scar titled characters gets to have scars all over. Well, not his face, not really, but you know, he still has a good chunk of scars. Like, men are allowed to have scars and look a little bit less pristine than women, which is quite problematic. But then I can justify the face with the he's too good to get hit in the face, or that Sejuani likes his face too much so he protects it most. Anyway, his clothing is all chipped and torn, his weapons have battle damage, his glaive is crude. And this all goes back to that, you know, Winter's Claw can't afford throwing things away and all that, blah blah blah. And a criticism and the thing I like about this glaive. So, the straps again should go way more. Like, this, to hold this much weight, either the wood has to be in the core all the way up to here, or the straps have to go farther down the heft. I know this because my grandpa makes a lot of handmade tools, especially axes and picks and things. So yeah, that's about that. And another thing I like about it is that the weight distribution is definitely better than this monstrosity over here. This thing might survive like 2 blows. We have, again, the studs I do not understand. Then we have the saddle. I like that the saddle seems to be fit for the cat. I like that. Then Stephen has this same achievement coins and metal teeth for some reason. There's a bird skull on his bone thingy. We have no idea what the fuck his weapon is. And he has a fucking military buzz gun, because why not? He's the major general. Oh look, also a swingy thing. A ring, sorry. So why is it so crude? Why is the craftsmanship so shit at Winter's Claw? As I think I have said on this video before, I already forgot, I know. Winter's Claw shunned the Hearthblood. Who are the Hearthblood? People who actually do normal work, like smithing and farming and herding and shit. And this explains why they're so bad at making everything, doesn't it? They never even try to learn anything other than survival and murder. It's kind of ancient Sparta, right? They relied on the Elotes, their slaves, to run everything while they went to war constantly. So, hold on, let's put visuals aside for just a second, and let's draw your attention to the name Stephen. So yes, the name Stephen with double F is a Germanic / Scandinavian name, but it comes from Greek origin, from the word Stephanos, meaning crown or wreath. And I think that fits. Freljord has a matriarchal culture in which one mother leads a tribe and gets to take multiple husbands and such. Mostly for power or resources or what have you. Now, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Stephen was one of Sejuani's bedmates. She did title him Scarthan after all, so a Thane is exactly under a Jarl, even if you go by Skyrim's logic. So if a Jarl is a lord, a Thane is like a mayor of some sort. You know what? Let's read his card art flavor text, actually. He says, I sealed my oath to Winter's Claw when Sejuani gave me my first scar. Every scar since has been earned in her service. You hear that? Do you know what the Freljord scar of Warmother's husband? Bloodsworn. Yeah, so there is a very real possibility that Stephen and Sejuani have a thing going on, but I doubt Riot Games will ever address it, since this guy just doesn't exist anywhere else outside of this JPEG. He isn't real anywhere else in the lore. And, you know, since he probably won't ever be a champion in League of Legends, the lore progression will never happen. Moving on, let's look at the precious little kitty cat over here. Look at those eyes. Look at him. Look. They're judging you. They know what you do in your private life. They know you and you touch yourself. Repent. Anyway, the cat has 6 legs, which means this isn't any random cat. This is a wild claw, a species of predators native to the Freljord that usually hunt in packs, but apparently can be tamed and mounted. I have learned that this specific wild claw with the redhead fur is called Moonfang, and that is the cutest shit I have ever seen. So far, at least. Sorry, this isn't intimidating at all. The name Moonfang? I want to scratch its chin. I want to rub its belly. I don't care that it can gut me with one swing. I believe that's enough of Stephen, and we'll move on to the next one. The Wolfrider. Perhaps my favorite artwork amongst all the Winter's Claw, and it is definitely not because of the goodest boy in all of the Freljord murderers with that hilarious shit-eating grin. We'll get to him in just a second. Let me read the flavor text first. The young riders of the Winter's Claw are given a wolf pup the moment they can hold a weapon. Their upbringing is devoted entirely to battle. The wolf trained to savage and maim, and the rider to pillage and steal. Now, the most interesting thing narratively about this card is that we have no idea who the Wolfrider is. But we have every idea about the wolf. In fact, the wolf has a canon name. Its name is Varg. It wasn't specified that this one was a merc wolf, so we just have to assume that normal wolves can just, you know, smile this obviously in the universe of Runeterra. So, light and composition. Varg is the largest object in the image, and the only thing even remotely comparable in importance is his rider. They are the only ones with light in their faces, they're the only ones not blurred away, and blurring here is perhaps more justified than most other places, because we're seeing a moment where Varg has just pushed off the ground. Like, look at here. He has just pushed off the ground mid-running, and if you know how fast wolves can run, it becomes pretty obvious why everything else is blurred. Now, let's look at the design of our main character, Varg, and his pet human there. Varg is smiling, and it's not just a cute golden retriever or Shiba Inu smile, it's a shit-eating grin. Varg is looking at the archers in front of him and saying, "Keep shooting, motherfucker, your ass is mine!" That is obviously not how a Canaan's face works, right? Like, his mouth is open all the way back to his mane. His teeth are way too large and weirdly placed compared to a real wolf. His eyes look like a human expression, and his hands have 4 fingers instead of 5. And all of this was intentional. The artists at MAR Studio took conscious decisions to make a larger-than-life fantasy character. Varg is supposed to have a character easily understandable by people who haven't spent way too much time studying canine species and their behavior. And so they make use of a good old phenomenon known as pareidolia. Pareidolia is the tendency to perceive a specific, often meaningful image in a random or ambiguous visual pattern. An easy example of this is seeing a door with a window on each side and thinking, "Hey, that looks like a face." This stems from us humans having evolved to look for and read other human faces and expressions. But since evolution isn't an exact process, we notice it everywhere it happens. And artists have learned to use it quite masterfully to convey a message or impression. So imagine Varg looked like a real wolf here. His snoot was smoother and smaller and rounder. His eyes and teeth were smaller, and he was snarling like a real wolf. That wouldn't be nearly as cool and nowhere as funny as our precious boy right here. Moving away from the face, Varg seems to have shackles? Bracelets? Like, the other wolves don't seem to have them, so what am I supposed to take from this? Is Varg supposed to be more ruthless, more accomplished? I don't get it, seriously. I have no idea. Then we have the fact that they seem to have saddles proper to their anatomy. However, even so, the rider still holds on to his hair. Like, come on, sister, you're hurting the poor baby. Now that I think of it, Sejuani also doesn't use a bridle on Bristle in some depictions. I guess the Winter's Claw just don't believe in optimization of any form. Like, armor is a sign of weakness, arrows are for pussies, and apparently riding your mount properly is for half-blood cowards. Anyway, let's analyze the rider. So, the immediately noticeable thing is that she's hiding her humanity. How does she do that? Well, the mask certainly helps. So, eyes are windows to the soul, and their obstruction closes that window to someone's soul and cuts the viewer off from the character's humanity. As we read in the flavor text, these riders have their entire childhood revolve around battle. This isn't an intimate moment at night with another tribesperson inside a closed hut or tent. This is a raid, and in this raid, this person has to be the Wolfrider. Their name doesn't matter, their gender and sexuality doesn't matter, their individual hopes and dreams don't matter. All that matters is that they sack the settlement, steal all the food, and then burn everything to ash and kill every survivor because Winter's Claw has way too many mouths to feed and way too few to give about the lives of people who won't actively fight to survive. All that said, we conclude that she isn't trying to be human here, she's trying to be a monster. And she is a monster. Of course, her cloak and spiky skirt are torn and her axe is crude and, you know, jagged and stuff. And it's held together by way too many leather straps. But points to her for trying to be intimidating at least. And of course, I think the ponytail and the little mantle thingy here are also made from the fur of Warg because it's the exact same color. Inside the game, when you attack with this card, one of the voice lines is her snarling loudly. Not Warg, not the wolf, the rider. She is as much of a beast as Warg is. Or at least that's how she wants to appear to whichever poor archers are shooting arrows at them in this scene. I guess that's enough for this one. My last comment is that I think it's kind of weird that after all these years we still have no name for her, but we do have one for Warg. Let's just move on to the next work. Scarmaiden Reaver, whose flavor text is another quote about the Winter's Claw mentality. Let me read. The weak harvest, but the strong take. The little Avarosans will learn which they are. As I talked about in the first video in the series, this insane enmity with the Avarosans didn't start with Sejuani and Ash, but rather with Sejuani's grandmother Heijan, who also started the whole expanding into other tribes and annexing everything part of the Winter's Claw lifestyle. Now, before we go over the splash art, I want to analyze the design alone, so let's move over to the concept art real quick. This concept art was done for both the Scarmaiden Reaver and the Rime-Tusk Shaman, who we will go over in the next video probably. Here we get a nice look at a decent angle, and the immediately noticeable thing to me is that the Reaver has the best armor among all of Winter's Claw after Sejuani herself. Since the Scarmaidens are supposed to be a type of unit or rank, we have no name for this specific woman, but we can still surmise quite a few things. One of the most obvious being that this war is not a Druvask. So yeah, it has glowing red eyes in the concept art, but that gets fixed in the final, so don't worry about that. And so we have confirmation that this is just a very large pig. This is like a wild boar if you have seen one. Because, you know, the only Druvask we know is Bristle, who has claws, white fur, and like bat-like features. This is just a normal warhog, maybe. Now, let's look at the Reaver's armor. Let's zoom. Okay. Although she has better armor than most, or rather everyone else in Winter's Claw, it is still nowhere as masterfully crafted as that of Sejuani's. This woman still needs a lot of leather straps and cloth and these thingies to keep everything in place. Her mount's armor is also not as specialized as that of Bristle's, which is typical. Sejuani is a Varmother, she should get the best treatment of everything. The reins in the concept art go around the boar tusks, but apparently it was scrapped for the final, which I'm glad. The teeth of the animal shouldn't hurt that much. Her glaive. Let's take a look at the glaive. So here, the glaive is made of bone, but I guess the connotation was that Winter's Claw could hunt something that just gave this much bone, and this went against the whole, you know, we are always dying of starvation thing, so they changed it to metal here. And I love the metal, by the way. Like, look at the dents and the damage. Always love me some battle-worn weapons. So, looking back at the armor, what do you notice in contrast to Sejuani? I'm gonna count to 10, then say it myself. See that? no cleavage. I don't see any boot plate or cleavage. However, do you not recognize that she's a woman? I have no problems. Do you? So, Sejuani shouldn't have had cleavage and boot plate. It wasn't necessary. But then Sejuani's rework was from what, 2016, 2018? And it was for League of Legends, so it has to go with the whole anime slash game busty babe thing. So I understand, but nah. So let me give a disclaimer right here. I have ample time to get mad at champion designs being worse than their follower NPCs, and I don't have the restrictions and the extensive feedback loops and compatibility adjustment that Riot artists have to go through. So please remember that my criticisms are aimed at Riot Games, the corporation, and not the artist who spent tens of hours drawing all of this better than 99% of us ever could. Like, I won't dare think I can just whip this up in a week. No, if I can pull this off, it will take me like 2 months. So, before I zoom over the gorgeous details of the final splash, let me just give a slight nitpick again. If you look at her boot right here, the boot has a heel now. What's the problem? It's not a high heel, it's not terrible, but it also doesn't serve any function. So, if you don't know, heels were originally invented by Persians to keep the boot in the stirrups, but I don't see any stirrups on the board. Neither here, neither here. See, this doesn't even have the heel, so what is she supposed to, you know, click her foot in? Why does it have heels? It's not that important, don't worry about it. We can just say the maiden would like to jump off and get into melee at a moment's notice or something along those lines. So, moving on, I talked about the glaive's battle damage, but also look at the armor. Just look at this gorgeous dents and wear and tear. Look at it. Holy crap. Even the leather, look, the leather is worn out. It's not perfect. It's tattered here and there. Because, you know, as I say 3,000 times a video, Winter's Claw don't do exactly renovations because they can't afford it. Jesus Christ, this is gorgeous. Moving on. So for someone called the Scarmaiden, I think just having this one scar over her eye is a bit too little. Like, we saw how Stephen was, right? He was covered in scars all over his torso, but look. Pristine skin, pristine skin. She even, like, you know, gets to perfectly shave and she doesn't have a single scar. No, sir. Yeah, this is just nitpicking. Don't worry about it. You'll see this in my analysis and like this much in the actual game. It doesn't really matter that much. So let's move on. I think she should have more muscles because of the, you know, this giant glaive thingy, and that they are supposed to be the elite vanguard of the tribe, which get most of the food and most of the training, and they actually can afford some things. So yeah, I think like, you know, she is rich enough to afford like discs in her hair and hair dye in the middle of frozen land. So a bit of muscle on her arms wouldn't really hurt, perhaps. Who cares? Okay, I've let's focus on the hair now. So she's a redhead with blue sideburns, and the red is, you know, compared to the fire, it works. But one cool thing is that if you look here, the front of the hair has become loose from the ponytail because it's not long enough, and she's riding an animal that jumps and rocks up and down a lot when sprinting. Remember how mad I got over Sejuani not being allowed this same courtesy in the call cinematic? Yeah. So, about the color harmony between her hair and the fire all around, as previously pointed, red and fire can be symbols of both passion and rage. And for Winter's Claw, brutality is their passion, in fact. Also, redheads have been treated harshly by a lot of cultures historically. Superstition has called them soulless, unlucky, witches, short-tempered, and so on. In my own country, I've heard something as outrageous as redheads have no sense of fidelity. Because, who knows? My apologies to all the redheads everywhere, but here at least the rageful and soulless aspect are still working for the Scarmaiden. These pig-riding pillagers have burnt down a village and are murdering innocents in cold blood for the crime of having a good harvest, as I read from the flavor text. Even though the Winter's Claw have an actual excuse that, all of them are starving, their practices are still not justified. Moving to light and composition, our main duo has been highlighted by fire all around them because their own color scheme is quite dark. I think that has some storytelling purpose, as in they come in the black of night, barely noticeable, and then set your homes aflame, and now you can't notice anything but the Reavers. Nothing else is left to notice. Speaking of visual storytelling, we also have a nice Dutch angle here, which, is tilting the camera to show stress, both because it gives the artist more space to work and, it connotates distress inside the scene. Oh, hey, look! It's the boar from the concept art with the bridle in its teeth. Yeah, I guess that's a nice homage. But still, do not hurt the animal's teeth like that, please, I beg of you. Okay, that should be all for this. See y'all in the next artwork. So, I lied when I said we won't be covering Sejuani again. There is one more splash art of her that I want to cover. And although it may have its design problems, I love it very much. Which splash art, you ask? Well, let's see together. If you recall, in the first video, I heavily criticized the original design of Sejuani. So, what am I doing putting it back here for a second analysis? Let me explain. Back when going over the Wolfrider, I said a specific sentence. That was, "This isn't an intimate moment at night with another tribesperson inside a closed hut." Remember? This is quite the opposite to that. This splash portrays precisely a moment of sheltered calm inside a relatively safe space. The purpose of it is only to commemorate the original design, sure, but Bo Chen truly took some time and told a whole story through their art. Before I go through the final splash, let me introduce you guys to some of the early concepts. So, let me say right off the bat that I am so happy Chen Baoao decided not to go further with these four concepts. The fact that this stupid design was forced to look cool in a battle scenario is just good decision making. Bikini armor needs some serious suspension of disbelief to pull off anything beyond, "Hey teenagers, get horny and buy this." And this design simply cannot pull that off, I'm sorry. No, it can't. All that said, Chen Bao is a fantastic artist, and all these are fantastic sketches. Let's move to the second concepts that show better context, in my opinion. Whereas the bottom left one here seems to be going for the same battle vibes, the other concepts have explored what ultimately made the art so beautiful. Sejuani sharing an intimate, heartfelt moment with Bristle. One thing that I'm glad was dropped is the connotation that Sejuani and Bristle were raised together. In the current lore, we know that Bristle was saved from the slaughterhouse on an Noxian battleship, and Sejuani hadn't met him beforehand. But one can justify a lot of things regarding this design if they read the original biography for Sejuani. Let's read that actually, shall we? So it says, "When Sejuani was born, the mystics of her tribe foretold that she would be the one to unite and lead the divided territories of Freljord. Her people had suffered for centuries, as a losing war on the frozen tundra pushed them farther and farther from Freljord's limited food supplies. Sejuani grew up surrounded by this misery, and it fueled her desire to fulfill her destiny. She pushed herself to extremes, walking out into blizzards without food or furs, and training while frigid winds raked her flesh. She sparred with the strongest warriors of her tribe, one after another, until her legs would give out beneath her. She sustained injuries that would have killed any other member of her tribe, but she would only rise again, driven by sheer force of will, and what her tribe took to calling her Heart of the Blizzard. On her 20th birthday, Sejuani declared that she would lead her people out of their remote isolation to conquer the lands of their enemies. She had completed her training, and she was ready to face the leaders of the opposing tribes. Her feats had already become legend, and soldiers in her company were inspired to new heights of strength and resolve. However, before she struck out on her campaign, Ashe began campaigning for peace in Freljord, joining the League of Legends to demonstrate how the people could be spared violence. To Sejuani, this was a violation of tradition, a coward's ruse to hoard Freljord's precious few resources. She saw the confidence of her people wane, as it seemed they would never be delivered from their plight. She decided that to truly prove herself as the rightful ruler of the Freljord, she must defeat Ashe completely and unquestionably on the world stage in the League of Legends. So, obviously, any piece of lore that remotely connects to the League of Legends isn't canon anymore and shouldn't be taken seriously. However, we can see how they originally tried to justify Sejuani being basically naked in the middle of a blizzard. It still looks like affirming the consequent to me. They made a Bikini Viking Red Sonja spin-off, then shoved an in-universe explanation to distance themselves from allegations of thirst trapping. This happens a lot everywhere, and I hate it. Either embrace your rampant horniness like some Japanese developers, or make actual, compelling designs that won't need skin showing to carry the entire thing. Let's get back to our subject. These concepts showing an innocent-looking, vulnerable side of our dynamic duo is a great idea, and very cute indeed. But it just wouldn't work when the in-game model looks like this. Just look at this. Yeah, there's no way you can attach any ounce of innocence to this thing. At least I'm nowhere near imaginative enough to do it. Like, look. What is this? What's this design? Jesus Christ. What am I watching? Anyway, let's move back. So, I love all of these concepts, but as we know, the bottom right one became the base for Final Splash. Now, one thing that is substantially different between this and the final product is the guy out of frame. This sketch, it looks like someone is trying to take Bristle for slaughter, and Sejuani has a hard time making peace for that. Whereas in the final splash, it turns into someone respectfully handing her the helmet. Let's go to this one. So this is one of the final work in progress images before we have the final splash art that went through extensive feedback loop and probably got edited 20 times over. We'll get to the main details in just a sec. The thing that is bugging me currently is that they removed this woman from the final splash. Like, the guy's still there. This guy's there. In fact, it takes center pace. But the girl just got deleted. Just shift plus delete. Why? What logical justification is there to just up and delete the girl? Like why? Why? Personally, I think it would actually work better if a woman handed Sejuani her helmet, because even before Legends of Runeterra was released and we got new depictions like the Scarmaidens, we still knew Freljord tribes had a matriarchal culture. It would simply be so cool to just keep going with this idea. The woman is standing and looking at Sejuani directly on equal ground, whereas the man has to bow to the War Mother. I don't want to assume that some random guy got insecure by the mere thought of this and axed the woman, but you'll never know with corpo idiots. For all I know, it could also have been cut not to offend the gamer bros TM, further than the main champion being shown more powerful than a muscly dude. Anyhow, look here. Now, we know that Sejuani has unearthly blue eyes, as is usual for an Iceborn. That said, I do like the fiery orange here. Now, it might be my bias as a Witcher fan, but white hair and fiery eyes just work for me. It just works. I also like the pattern fade on the side of her hair. I genuinely enjoy it when the community that doesn't have cutting-edge technology is still depicted as masterful in design or art or something. Also, like the normal eyes on Bristle, like the white eyes of his original form are cool and badass, but the emotionality of a normal eye is truly something else. Let's move on to the final art for thorough analysis now. So let's start off with the most obvious improvements. Sejuani actually has muzzles and scars and stuff now. This is fantastic. This is awesome. This is what I want to see from a Winter's Claw member if they are showing skin. And yes, I know that they could have gone even harder and given way more scars and muscles, but I also accept that Sejuani as a War Mother has the best armor and most protection, so she's allowed to have less average scar count than a random ass warrior. Another fantastic detail is Sejuani's hesitant look towards the helmet. She knows she has duties as a War Mother. She knows this brief moment of respite must end and she must keep searching for food to supply her tribe. But she doesn't want this moment to end. These small moments alone with Bristle are probably the only time she's allowed to be emotional vulnerable young woman, rather than a brutal, dominating war mother with a zero-tolerance policy. The helmet and the buff guy are the callback to her duties, and they have been blurred because they aren't the main subject with this image. The main subject is Sejuani and Bristle's hesitance. Bristle is saddled and ready, but Sejuani is not armored, and her flail is hung up on the wall. Speaking of not being in armor, that is not how undergarments would have looked like amongst the Nordic tribes at all. Like, from what my research shows, what counted as underwear was just a simple tunic under the other garments. Leather bikini with metal and fur was definitely not things one would wear for solitary comfort in their home. But hey, this is a fantasy thing. Sejuani is an ice sport, resistant to the cold, and the Riot Games can come up with infinite explanations of how Freljordians have great lingerie design, actually. Moving on, we see that Sejuani's eyes are back blue, and her face looks more consistent with other depictions. Especially that strong jaw and the scar over her nose. I believe this is also the only time we see Sejuani wearing nail polish, but neither Frostbite nor Nightshade Essence look like that, so it must be some form of nail polish. The reason this is the first time is probably that the other depictions just have her wear gloves, but it's a nice touch, I think. If the Scarmaidens get to paint their hair, there's nothing stopping the War Mother from having a little bit of nail polish when it's in the comfort of a home. It's not a full face of makeup after weeks of starvation in the snow like you saw in the Call cinematic, it's just a tiny bit of color on her nails. Okay, we talked about composition, now let's talk about lighting. Where is that light even coming from? Like, I understand that the stable might have skylights if you see snow falling down, but look here. The window to the outside shows a dark weather? Don't get me wrong, I understand that light has to be used to centralize our favorite duo, but it's just a bit funny that there's a literal spotlight from above, like as in they're in a theater. I would have liked it better if it had an orange hue at least, to connotate a candlelit chandelier, or torches on the ceiling or something. I guess, God forbid Sejuani be depicted less white than a vampire. I'm joking of course, I have no idea if that was an actual concern in the feedback loop. Thank you very much for watching. Did you enjoy this video? What did you think of the bonus round? I would be more than happy to read about your takes on these arts and my points as well. Why don't you comment them down below? Subscribe to this channel for more swooning over splash art. Try to remain respectful to those you disagree with. Don't look down on people worse off than yourselves. And until next time, may your dreams never fade away.